Hi, my name is Bob Frank, and I'd like to talk a bit about income taxes and all this hoopla that's been raised recently about increasing the taxes on the top 1% of the millionaires and billionaires. I wanted to see if the numbers that have been given to us by our government and our media are accurate and really do add up. All the information I'm going to share with you is readily available on the IRS's website and is based upon 2009 tax returns when I talk about tax numbers, and 2012 budget numbers when I talk about budget numbers. That's the most recent information that's available from the IRS on tax returns and from the White House on the budget. We hear a lot of talk about increasing taxes on this top 1% or increasing the taxes on the millionaires and billionaires. Well, I thought we should look at their tax returns and see how much money they really make and how much is taxable, and then see whether or not that will really solve our problem. So first I decided, let's try to find this mysterious 1%. In 2009, about 140 million tax returns were filed. And of those, about 1.4 million, or ironically, about 1%, were for people who reported that their taxable income was over $500,000. So if we want to talk about the people that are in the top 1%, it's those who make about have taxable income of about $500,000 or more. Now that's sort of interesting because our government and our officials keep talking about this top 1%, and then they talk about the 200,000 people and below not having any tax increases coming to them. And then there's this gap. There's the 200 below and the 500,000 above, and there's nothing going on with the people in between, and that's about 6 or 7 million tax returns encompassing about 21 million Americans who are left in sort of this limbo as to what's going to happen with them. That's a big range of unaccounted information. I think either that the people that are promoting this idea can't think things through correctly, or they can't do math, or they have found the problem, as I've discovered, that taxing the top 1% alone won't solve our problems. I'm going to show you how I think the last choice here, that taxing the 1% won't solve our problems, is the winner. You cannot tax your way out of the economic mess we've gotten ourselves into. And what the politicians have done is they've muddled things up, talking about this $200,000 down here and the $500,000 1% up here, and confusion about what's going on in between those. If taxes are going to go up on those people who make over $200,000, then we're no longer talking about 1%. We're talking about 6%. And therefore, the people who occupy Wall Street and all of that, they're no longer going to be 1% versus 99%. It's going to be 6% versus 94%. So folks, watch, listen, think, learn, and question your politicians, for they're going to muddy the waters here and try to confuse us. And I hope this video will help straighten things out. So let's look at these $500,000 and above 1%ers. In 2009, this group had a total taxable income of about $1.8 trillion. So if we tax those people at 100% of every taxable dollar they had, we would raise about enough money to cover about half our budget. But as nice as it may seem, I think we all agree that it would be wrong to tax anybody 100%. They'd have no money for gasoline, for food, clothing, mortgage payments, or even to buy drinking water. What's more, if we were to tax people at 100%, they would have no incentive to ever do any work, so they would just quit and then we wouldn't get any taxes at all. So clearly, taxing somebody 100% doesn't work. So let's see what happens if we increase their taxes to 50%. Now remember, we're already getting from these people 28%. So if we increase it to 50%, which is far more than either President Romney or Mitt Romney have suggested, but if we increase it to 50%, we only get this gap increase. We're already getting this down here. And when we do increase it to 50%, all that does, this gap, is adds $309 billion to our income each year. We're still short about $600 billion from a balanced budget. So raising the taxes on all the people who have taxable income of over $500,000 will not solve our problem. It's nothing more than a smoke and mirrors game that politicians are playing with us. Well, now that we know that raising the taxes on the top 1% of the millionaires and billionaires will not solve our problems, let's look what happens if we raise the taxes on all the people making over $200,000. Because remember, we've been told there's going to be no tax increases on the people making under $200,000, so maybe we are going to start taxing the 6%ers. Well, that group, the top 6% in 2009, paid about $868 billion in income taxes on about $3.2 trillion in taxable income, or about 27%. So we're already getting 27% from them. There's no point in talking about 100% because we know we would never do that. That'd be ridiculous. So what happens if we take those that are already paying 27% and add another 23 so we get them to the 50% level? 50% level on the top 6% will bring us in only an additional $753 billion, and we're still going to be about $400 billion short. So folks, attacking the 1% and the 6% does nothing to solve our economic problems and only places the blame on a group of people who had nothing to do with causing the problem. In fact, they probably helped avoid it, and they have no capabilities to fix it on their own. We cannot fix our problems by taxing our way out of this mess. We can only fix this problem by cutting expenses in conjunction with possibly raising some taxes and eliminating some tax loopholes. Please, don't fall victim to this rhetoric about the 1% and the millionaires and billionaires. The top 6% of our people are paying 24% of our government's operating budget. And if we were to have a balanced budget solely based upon as a result of expense reduction, then the top 6% would be then paying 38% of our annual budget. I'm an American, and I believe in democracy where all are treated equal. To require, through taxation, that 6% of your people bear the financial burden for 24% of the nation's expenses seems a bit unfair to the 6%. To further ask that they carry the burden for 38% seems outlandish, especially when even under the most onerous conditions, such as those associated with a 50% federal income tax, we still don't solve our economic problems. So friends, don't believe all this rhetoric about taxing the 1% or the millionaires and billionaires will solve our economic problems. Even nearly doubling the taxes on the top 6% won't fix the mess we're in. We have to cut expenses. There is no other alternative. And any politician who tells you that they can balance the budget without cutting expenses, all expenses, is not being honest with you. We need to cut expenses, close loopholes, and seriously address the issue of waste in our government. The endless credit card that the U.S. government seems to think it has needs to be canceled. When we have cleaned up this mess that has been festering for 50 years, then we can see what tax increases, if any, will need to be implemented. It is possible that after we clean up the mess that's been created, we may not need to raise taxes at all. Thanks very much for listening to me. I look forward to reading your comments and thoughts. Goodbye.